Well, we can just continue as people come on, take a few minutes before everybody joins us. So for those people who are joining, uh, welcome to Change for Good. We have people here from across the US, Canada, from other parts of the world as well. And as we are, this is just before we start, just thinking that this is the first Change for Good this year in 2021. After doing many episodes week after week last year, we're so excited to be back. And for those of you just joining us now, welcome to Change for Good. I'm here in Toronto, and we welcome everybody who's participating from all over the place. I'm so pleased to be here with Wini Cudjoe, who's the Director of Operations from Ronald McDonald House in New York. Welcome, Wini.
Thank you, Paul. I'm delighted to be here and part of the conversation.
Well, this is the first change, as I said, the first Change for Good conversation this year, and there's nobody better to have it with than you. For people who, anyone on this Change for Good conversation who has never been to a Ronald McDonald House, it is one of the most remarkable experiences I could think of ever having in my life. I've had the great, privilege really to have gotten to know Ronald McDonald Houses here in Canada, also to have been to RMH in New York City, where Wini is today. It's a place where there's extraordinary combination of both very difficult things and also incredible hopefulness as well. And I don't know, sort of in some way mirrors what's going on in the world today. And so it's just a very special opportunity to speak with you, Wini. Before we get into our conversation, just wanted to remind everybody here that it's not just a conversation between Wini and myself. We welcome your questions, we welcome your ideas, and we hope that we can get to all of them. Wini, just to kick this off, I think everyone would just love to hear a little bit about you, yourself, your background, and then your role at RMH in New York.
Again, thank you, Paul. So my name is Wini Cudjoe, Director of Operations here at Ronald McDonald House, New York. I have worked for the organization for over, I'm going to put it out there, 29 years. Actually, I've crossed the mark of 28. The mission here at the house is really to provide temporary housing and support for families and children who are undergoing treatment for cancer and other pediatric illnesses. We partner with 16 hospitals in 8 hospital systems. And over the past 40 years, we have served over 59,000 families from across the world. Approximately 40% of our population is international. For those of you who've not been at the house or had the unique opportunity of even checking out our website, the house is a 95-room facility located on the Upper East Side of the city. We have 6 post-transplant suites for families and children who need to be in isolation, but we have great amenities such as kitchens, outdoor terraces, transportation services, a wellness center, family support team. We also have playroom activities and much, much more. On a daily basis, my job and responsibility is to manage the operations team, the family support team, and they in turn manage the day-to-day needs of the families. I also have a relationship with all the partnering hospitals. I manage most of our capital projects, and I'm part of our strategic planning team.
Is that all?
That's all for the moment. Thank you.
Incredible. Well, again, for people who haven't experienced Ronald McDonald House themselves, one of the things that I learned when I first went to a Ronald McDonald House is something which is sort of a central to all the work that you and your colleagues do there, called family-centered care. And because there are no medical facilities, there's no medical procedures at the house, but it's built around this idea of family-centered care, which I found so powerful. wondered if you could just share, just tell people participating today what that really means, or perhaps even share a story of what that looks like.
Well, I think when we think about family-centered care, we really think about the relationship between the medical team and the child. And all the Ronald McDonald houses do a fantastic job in bridging what are the additional needs families will need during that time when their child is receiving treatment. Our goal is to bridge that gap. We want to create supportive setting for family members, keep lines of our communication with them open. We want to create provide a healing environment for the family while they're staying with us. It's so important that these families know there's a seamless circle of care around them. Being at the house, I think when we think about the wellness center, playroom, and our programs, we're able to bring those services to families as well as address food insecurities or social or emotional support. So those are taking that family-centered care idea on a higher level, where it's not just about working back with the medical team and the child, but working with the entire family. When I think about a family or a story that comes to mind, we had one family that came in from overseas. There was mom, dad, and the daughter, and the family was in tears weekly. They were very confused. They didn't know what resources were available to them. And it was a very terrifying time for this family. And so one day their social worker advised them of a resource that was going to be available to families in Queens. And so the family went over, and it was a group of lawyers that were providing pro bono work for families who needed more information on how to navigate the system. And so when it came to their turn to meet with the lawyer, they sat down and began to tell the story. And the lawyers were so touched that they took on their case at no cost to the family. The lawyers worked back with the medical team and the social worker, and then the social worker worked back with us to make sure that the family and the child was able to stay while the child was in active treatment. We provided the food, the well-being, and the emotional support to this family. To me, that is a true example of family-centered care.
Amazing. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. You just said also made me think of one of the things that I had the great privilege of doing with our team was one of the meals, home. I can't, what's it called? Home for dinner. There's a program that RMH has where volunteers can come in and make meals for the families, and it was just making me think that now, today, during COVID, must be that many of the things like that aren't possible anymore. And you've got people who are like, unlike other RMHs, they're more locally focused. As you said, people coming from all over the world because of the special programs and relationships that you have with cancer hospital there. So how have things changed for families who depend on RMH there and would have come there from different parts of the world that can't get there now as well, or perhaps at all? What are you seeing today, and how is that changing?
So I think what we're seeing, it's been a long journey. We started this back last year, March, and prior to that, we were fully engaged as an organization in trying to understand what were the ramifications or implications of COVID to the house and the services we provide. And so we continuously communicate with our partner in hospital, and they continue to maintain treatment plans as scheduled for the families who desperately need treatment. So we continue to work with them. And so we continue to provide housing and support to these families. Since COVID, we've never wavered in our ability to service families, and the house has remained open. But we've had to pivot. And in pivoting, we've had to lean in on many virtual programs as opposed to in-person programs. I think some of the major changes that our families had to face was really with our meals and lack of access to our kitchens. At one point, we really had to just shut down the kitchens from a health and safety perspective. And this had a tremendous impact on our families. it really took them for a tailspin. They did not know how they were going to manage. But we were very fortunate. We have great organizations and companies that continue to support us. And so we were able to bring in our in-room dining program where meals are served to families three times a day, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And I think that is a credit to our community and those who are out there to support us and the families while they're receiving treatment. Our programs team continue to bring virtual programming, but to help support that, they actually make the care packages of activities that the families are going to be using that day. And then one more thing that we added that was really significant is that we went back and we looked at our transportation system. And so we started to provide single car transportation for families to get to and from appointments, being mindful of COVID and all the implications of being in a shared community. So we really took the time to look at all those needs and how they would impact the families here at the house. We have staff that work around the clock to make sure that families' individual needs are met. And so anyone who has stayed with us, who have left the house and still need access for support, we have a virtual program, an online support group for our alumni. So all of that has made it possible for us to continue to provide those necessary services that these families so desperately need.
And do you have a sense, I mean, maybe hard to know, but as you said, you've got, in other times, families coming from different parts of the world because of the special services that are provided there. What is the situation? These are vulnerable families and sometimes in difficult and vulnerable parts of the world. Do you have a sense of are you in touch with those families or are able to provide any kind of help to them? And what are you seeing?
Well, I know for firsthand that our family support team and our programs team are working back with these individuals by providing these online virtual support programs. And that has had an incredible impact in being able to support them at this very, very difficult time for our families. The families who are in-house are isolated in their rooms, away from their own families and each other. And so it is incredibly difficult, but I also see the joy and the happiness when we have the programs and you see someone in their room and they're so fully engaged with each other and with the programs that we have. I do remember a time that we were giving out some gift cards to families. And I think we were somewhere maybe in the month of May. And everyone was very nervous about connecting with each other. And one of the moms was at the door waiting for her turn while one was sitting inside. And they waved to each other and they wanted to embrace and they were like, I haven't seen you in so long. And you could see the desperation, but also the joy of them being able to connect. They were distance apart, but just being able to see each other had made a major impact on the two of them. And then when we were giving out the cards, one mother was so grateful. She came in for the hug. And my family support manager was like, she's coming in, she's coming in. And I'm like, I can't stop it, she's coming in. And she came in for the hug. And it's, that need for connection to an individual is so important. And COVID has definitely tested our resilience in trying to keep us safe by distancing and wearing masks. But there's so much of an emotional connection that we need to have with each other that's part of human nature. And so for that mom, that moment, it was incredibly important for her to show her gratitude to us.
Oh, an incredible story. We have a number of questions here. I'll just kind of jump to one of them now. Okay. We have a question from Grant who's asking, how do you engage with clients outside of treatment? As an example, feedback and design processes to improve or change or create new services. Is that something that you're doing, like working with the families to actually help to kind of co-design what they need?
And thank you, Grant, for that question. Our family support team and programs team do an incredible job of soliciting feedback from these families and using that information to pivot on how we can improve the services and offerings that we currently have. So that is something that The team constantly evaluates to make sure that they're hitting the mark with these families who are struggling on very different levels, whether it be financially, whether it be socially, or psychologically. We don't provide psychological services, but we can understand the impact that these stresses have on the family. So we really work back on using the information that we gather from the surveys that we're collecting from the families and utilize that information to pivot to restructure programs or our offerings that are available to our families.
Thank you. And thanks, Grant, for asking the question. Another thing that I've been thinking about, over the last year, I guess most of us have, is, this extraordinary and sad realization that those who are most vulnerable before are even more vulnerable now. That access to health services, even here, and forgetting about other countries that have, bigger economic and social challenges is difficult. So how are you seeing that, the increased vulnerability of people as it relates to the services that you provide at RMH?
We're a community-based organization, Paul, and it is incredibly important that we support each other. And we've learned that this can be done in a myriad of ways. On a personal level, connecting with loved ones, picking up a new hobby or learning something new can be just as rewarding. We always complain that we don't have time. Well, COVID has certainly given us back time. And so one really needs to think about where your interests may lie and how you can lean into the opportunity to take the time to learn something new. On a community level, I think donating your time to others can have a huge impact in you being able to give back and really take yourself out of your own space, but understanding there may be others out there who may be in even a more of a vulnerable position than you are. So I commend everyone and recommend that volunteering can certainly have a major impact for individuals. But it's also taking the time to listen to where people and meeting them where they're at. We can all be very busy in our own day to day, but when you stop and listen to other people's worries and challenges, it somewhat helps you put your own life into perspective. And I think that can also be done in a myriad of ways, whether it be reaching out to state and local community-based organizations that can help with some of these concerns that people are experiencing. We've worked with food insecurity organizations. We've specifically worked with God's Love We Deliver, and they've been able to help support the house through some of our meal programs. So there are resources that are out there. I would recommend that everyone go online, look at their local websites. They're very educational and user-friendly, and they can use this information to help alleviate some of the stresses that they're experiencing at this time.
Thank you. Another thing that just comes to mind in listening to you and thinking back to what you described about as the extraordinary level of responsibility you have there, which is far more than most people have. And you're dealing with a population that's extraordinarily vulnerable in different ways, and there's a huge complexity to your work there that you've had to negotiate there and make some of the changes that you described. Just thinking about it for other people who may not be in quite as complex situation as you are, but still have organizations that have a very different change dynamic. Do you have any thoughts about, advice that you could provide to people in their own respects, in their own organizations, to kind of things that you've learned along the way over the last number of months that maybe you could share?
I think one of the things that I've learned most importantly is that I'm not in this alone. I work with an incredible team of people whose goal is not every so often, but every single day is to address how we can support the families here at the house. I think it's also important to know that we're here to support each other. And so we come to work with a can-do attitude. What can we do to improve the lives of the families, but also our own day-to-day environment. We talk to each other when we're stressed. We find, comfort in reaching out to our team members to get a better understanding as to where we're at for ourselves. I know for me personally, I reach into my team and really speak back to them on where I feel some of the stresses are and struggles, but they somewhat bring me back to, a place of grounding and really being able to reconnect with what is the mission and what is the goals and what are we trying to do for families that are staying here at the house. Everyone is passionate about their work here and is dedicated, and that's hence I've been here 29 years. So it all comes full circle. And so again, there are days we're all going to be stressed. There are days where we all find that we don't know if we're coming or going or how we're going to make it through the next hour. But if you reach out to those people that give you support, I think you can find yourself in a place where you will be able to get to the next moment, through the next hour, and be able to continue to, as one, I would say, come through COVID, because it is challenging and there are days when it's just daunting. But there is hope at the end of all of this.
And building on that, we have another question from Dawn, who says, her question is, what has been your proudest moment during the crisis?
What has been my proudest moment? My family. My family. If I were to think about my husband, my son, my siblings, that would be my proudest moment on a personal level. Being able to be there for them to be there for me. We've consistently worked through COVID, and there's been times when it's been really difficult. On a work level, it's the people that I work with. They allow me to bring my best self to work every single day. And even when I'm finding that there's challenges, they lift me up to be my best self. And I hope in turn that I'm doing the same for them. So those are the main areas. I think it's somewhat overwhelming when you're listening to the news and the stories, and there's a lot of pain out in this world today. And so we have a responsibility to connect with each other, to support each other. And I've surely found in my place and working in the house that I'm able to do that, and having the support of my family really pulls me to do my very best every single day.
Thank you, Shing. I love that. I feel the same way. What you said, and speaking about families, you've got this very extreme situation there, that working with families who are in such a difficult situation, but also we have families all over the world who are in a very different situation themselves, and they've got kids at home, some at school or not at school, or trying to work, maybe not have a job, they're trying to juggle everything. So I thought it would be so helpful for people who are at home with their families and, trying to negotiate some of the stresses and practical things that we're all into now. Do you have any thoughts or advice for people who are at home with families about how they might, cope better or differently as we're in this pandemic?
Again, it all boils back to leaning on each other, setting up systems that work for you and your family. A lot of families are multitasking within the home, whether it be one parent out at work, one parent in the home at work, different ages of children who need schooling. I cannot imagine that at this time. I have one son who's going to be 19 next week, and that's a handful for me. So I can't imagine having small children who need to keep up with their educational studies on different levels. But again, it's about, for me, organizing space and time and leaning into family time when you need to be fully present, and separating work time from when you need to be addressing work issues. It's difficult, it's challenging, but it takes a team of people, whether mom, dad, children, everyone needs to be on the same page, but also recognizing when somebody's actually struggling in that day, in that moment, with being on the same page and fully present. And again, listening to them, not dismissing them, taking the time to understand what their anxieties are important, and being able to acknowledge that, I think, is half the battle. If we dismiss it, then we're not giving that person the space that they need. But if we acknowledge it, I think we're in a better position to help support them in being able to manage those stresses when they're actually being affected by that.
Thank you. I've got a question here from Christine. It actually was kind of connected to something else I wanted to ask you, but we'll get to her, Christine's first. She asks, what changes did you need to make during this time that have resulted, I guess, in some surprising bonuses, or something that's good that's happened that maybe you didn't expect?
Thanks, Christine, for that question. I think one of the changes that I made for myself is trying to become really organized. I spent a lot of time reorganizing myself, my spaces, trying to make sure the energy around me is positive, trying to declutter. I felt like that also allowed my brain to be clearer in its thinking. I felt that if there was too many things around me that was just confusing, it didn't help me in me being able to manage myself and my expectations. So almost doing my own internal feng shui for myself, for my spaces, helped me to be able to be fully present with whatever task or activity I was addressing at the time.
I feel like you're a super organized person in general. So taking it to another level is way beyond my ability. Now, Winnie, we don't, sadly, we're almost out of time, but I thought we might close out if you could share another story, something, we've talked about, and we had a chance to talk last week as well, there's an incredible spirit of positivity and optimism that permeates Ronald McDonald House as well. Is there a story that you can think of that brings that to life, some hopeful story from one of your families that you might be able to share?
Ironically, before we went on the call, Paul and I were sharing stories about our own Ronald McDonald House memories, and there were stories that really just brought us to tears. And so before we got the countdown, it was 5 seconds, wipe your eyes, because we were both in tears with two of the stories that we were sharing with each other. But I think one of the stories that brings hope and community together was this past Christmas. And so I've worked here for a long time, and we've always had a relationship with our local police department and fire department. And every year they come in as Santas and they bring toys to the children. But this year it wasn't going to be possible. And so they came up with an incredible creative idea of connecting. And I think the police department was responsible for purchasing all the gifts, and the fire department, in collaboration, was responsible for bringing the fire truck down the block, bringing up the ladder, and actually having Santa on the ladder and being present at every guest room window. And the joy that it brought to the families and the kids blew us away. I think that speaks of our community, the supporters that we have, but also speaks of the resilience of the house and the impact that it has on families. And so that was a wonderful way for us to close out the year, seeing these families at their windows. It didn't matter where you were from, what religion, what beliefs you had. All the kids just wanted to know, was Santa coming to their window and they could make their wish. And that was possible. And the police department and the team went one step further, and they made sure that they bought gifts that were on the kids' wish list. So when it came to Christmas Day, it really did feel like Santa heard them, dropped off their gifts, and it was a wonderful way for us to close out the year. So that was a fantastic opportunity that we were able to bring to the house without even thinking that it would be possible earlier on in the year with COVID.
That's incredible. Did you guys film that?
It's filmed, and I'm sure it's on our website. And the families, the communication team can make sure that you have access to seeing that, and as is everyone else, because it was
You
a
know what I want to
wonderful
do?
moment.
I want to, because everyone, by the way, everyone who's participating here and everyone on our whole Change for Good list will get a link to this conversation. You could watch it, you can share it. We
Mhm.
could share that too.
That would be
That would be
fantastic.
such a beautiful thing. We're out of time, but Winnie, I've got to ask you one more thing.
Go ahead, Paul.
You told me something before that I loved, and I know everyone else will.
Okay.
And it's your 6 questions.
Ah, so every Sunday we have a call with my family, and so half of my family is in England and half of us are here. And every Sunday we have to present what was your week like in 6 questions, in six words, I should say. 6 words. And so every week we go around the call and everyone says, and there are weeks that someone's having a really difficult time. Mine for the last week was work, 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 work. I'm gonna have to be more creative this week, but it really leans into where people are at and meeting them where they're at, and really trying to give them the support that they need at that time. And so I have one niece who's a teacher, and she just throws her hands up in the air. She's like, the kids, right? Or there's one specific kid, she'll say his name and she'll say, oh, so we all need to know what he's doing this week. Because again, they're on Zoom and there's always stories, but it really gives us a way to connect with each other and meeting us where we're at, because it surely has been difficult times for everyone. So everyone should have their 6 words for the week and share it with their family.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Paul.
Ever since you told me that, I've been thinking about 6 words, and I still do. And everyone here, this is probably the best advice we could have from anybody this week, is to think about your 6 words. So, Winnie, thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure. I feel like we could just keep talking.
I
And I'm going to
think we
get back.
can go.
I'm going to get back to the house there as soon as I can.
Okay, that would be great. Thank you, everyone. I really appreciate this opportunity for sharing this time with you all. And I hope that we can do this sometime in the near future.
It's great.
Okay, thank you.
Stay safe.
Thank you. Likewise.
Thank you. Bye.